Next slide. Beautiful. It's a Maria, everyone. Welcome, committee members, staff, and those watching online. Please ensure that your devices are either switched off or on silent mode whilst this meeting is in progress. If a cell phone interrupts the course of the meeting, we will stop and wait for the device to be muted. So the deliberations on the Greytown Water Supply Services is being held in the super room of the Waihina Centre, Martinborough Town Hall, and it is being live streamed and will be available to view on Council's YouTube channel. I think everyone is familiar with our emergency exits in front of me or behind me, and gathering in the outside by the playground in the event of emergency. That will move us into our karakia to open. So if you could all join me this morning in our karakia, that would be fantastic. Two apologies this morning. So we have apologies from Mayor Connolly and Councillor Maynard. Do I have a councillor to accept the apologies, please? Thank you, Councillor Elams, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Gray. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, no. The motion is carried. Do we have any conflicts of interest this morning? That being said, we'll move on to the confirmation of the minutes. We are now considering the Strategy Working Committee minutes from the 24th of October. Do we have any comments, changes, updates to that set of minutes, please? That being the case, do I have a mover to confirm that the minutes of the Strategy Working Committee meeting held on 24 October 2024 are true and correct record, please? Thank you, Councillor Gray, and we'll go with Councillor Olds as the seconder. That's fine. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. All those against, no. The motion is carried. That moves us on to the main topic of conversation for this morning, the Greytown Water Supply Services deliberations, being item 5.1. Got Adam and Rob with us this morning to take us through the report. Oh, and we also have Lawrence from Wellington Water and Anthony Finch as well, who's one of our team. Sure. So yeah, so do I have a mover please to receive the Greytown Water Supply deliberations report? Thank you, Councillor Plummer, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Elams. All those in favour of receiving the report, please say aye. All those against, no. Motion is carried. Do you want to take us through the paper and perhaps just acknowledge the history that got us here? This isn't something that we've picked up recently. This has been an ongoing and lengthy process with a lot of in-depth work and attention to it. So take us through the paper. That would be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just before we start, Stefan, would you like to introduce?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to introduce Peter Trafford to you. Peter is our new principal engineer, Three Waters. Peter comes to us from many years at Watercare, and also has done some work on, with a company called FinTech, and has got a high degree of specialisation, and it'd be fair to say, in the design and build of wastewater and water treatment plants. Peter's third day in. We're really looking forward to working with you, Peter, and I'm sure that is also true for the council team. Good to get, this is something that council has requested and have been looking forward to for some time. Good to get another source of technical oversight and expertise on our network located within council. So, Peter Trafford.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Some of the historical context to this, members will know it probably better than I have, because I've been here long enough. But it was raised by Wellington Water and by council concerns about the current water supply to Greytown. At the time, there was a limited consultation that took place, talking with some of the park stakeholders. As I recall, I think only 5 people submitted to that, of which the majority of those park stakeholders raised concerns about the infrastructure within the park. And council resolved to go out for broader consultation on options to consider. And as part of that process, Wellington Water engaged with a number of members of the community to look at alternative options. So they put forward a number. Those options got whittled down through a options consideration down to 3. We workshop those with yourself and also shared that with the community board. Those options then were adopted to go out for consultation, outlining the pros and cons of all those options. As a result, we received 106 submissions to the consultation, so significantly more, much more broader view from residents in Greytown, but also outside of Greytown. And you heard those hearings. You had 11 presenters. As I mentioned at the last meeting, I thought the quality of the submissions and the data was really excellent. And I think that provided you some really good questions, additionally to what happened in the hearings, of which those questions are recorded in this report. Wellington Water have been able to respond to those. If you have more questions, they are here to answer those questions for you. The report that you've got in front of you now, the purpose of today's meeting is to really debate and discuss the findings. You've had time now to reflect on those presenters, on the 106 submissions, and this report is really a representation to the best of our abilities of what we have found and heard to provide you advice on next steps. There were some very interesting findings about future use of certain facilities like shed land and so forth, sort of outside of our scope, but really valuable, I think, insights. It's quite clear from the results, 69% of people support putting it in Soldiers Memorial Park, predominantly, as you would have read in the report, because concerns about costs, but also risk around operation and supply. However, there are concerns about the park still, and I've done my best to work through with Stefan and his team around some of the resolutions to make it very specific about what they may be looking for and reflecting that sentiment from the community. I also dived a bit deeper into some of the data, looking at other perspectives, so people outside of Greytown and what they thought of the supply versus those inside of Greytown. Fortunately, a lot of those results are still very similar. And also the other big decision you're making today is about how you want to fund it. Predominantly, more people said that district-wide was a more equitable approach to doing that, but there were some mixed views.
Yes.
So welcome any questions, and as I said, we've got the team here from Wellington Water and our own water team to answer any questions that you might have prior to your decision.
Thank you. And for the paper, it does take a really good look at the feedback that we have received and how that all works. So thank you for that. Councillors, have we got any questions to kick off with? Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question to Wellington Water from one of our submitters, for instance. During the process of listening to him, he raised, this is the operator of the Greytown campground, he raised the issue about a humming noise that would have an impact on his business in terms of, I guess, the environment and the fact that he operates a campground there. I guess my question to Wellington Water would be, if that was the chosen option, how would we mitigate that for that annoyance?
That question about the noise there.
Yes, yeah, thanks, Adam.
Yes, yes. So we've had a look, another look at the district plan around what's permitted in terms of sound levels. Lawrence has got some actual numbers he can read back to you. I guess I'll just kick things off and say from a high level, the existing bore pump is an above ground motor.
Right.
And so the existing pump is a more noisy pump as it is anyway, and the pumps that we're looking to implement as part of the project will be below ground and actually submersible pump, so it'll be a lot quieter pump. Lawrence, do you want to add any more on the decibel front?
Yeah, so in terms of noise levels, I guess there's a few things to consider. There's the combined district plan noise limits that we've got just for information, but as Adam mentioned, the replacement pumps and motors would be submersible and below ground and significantly quieter than the above ground motor that's there at the moment. The noisiest piece of equipment is a compressor that would be actually within the treatment plant container itself and only operates periodically at operating level of around 77 decibels, but that's within the container, so the actual noise outside will be significantly less than that, and we will check noise levels and consider if any further dampening is needed. But you know, for comparison, the existing bore motor, which is exposed and effectively operates on a near continuous basis, was measured around 60 decibels within 2 meters of the pump, and about 55 decibels from 10 meters from the pump, and that was prior to the installation of the noise barriers, the temporary barriers that are in place at the moment.
Right.
Could I just ask a question? Just on the, if there was any further dampening of the sound required, is that reasonably, I mean, is that a very expensive option, or is it?
My gut feeling at the moment is that that's unlikely to be needed, but there could be some additional material put on the inside of the container to dampen the noise down. But again, like I said, I think that's unlikely. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but I guess the big question was, if it did need requiring, it's not, if it doesn't sound very expensive, is it more lining on the container?
It shouldn't be significant, I wouldn't have thought, no.
Oh.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Thanks, Chair. And one of the other questions we had from another presenter was around the current proposal lacks any sort of appropriate design for water storage, giving sort of confidence in supply. That be addressed at some point within this. The current design is sort of light on detail.
Right. Lawrence, did you want to add anything about this on the storage front for Greytown?
Yeah, so I think that is answered as one of the questions in the pack, but effectively we do have water storage in the form of the Waihini treated water reservoir, but of course that does come with the hydraulic constraints between the reservoir and Greytown, which basically means that you need the bore supply to provide the pressure into the network. The fact that we would have 2 bores in a duty standby arrangement does provide you with that operational resilience that a reservoir would provide. So effectively you're using the below ground aquifer as your reservoir, if you like.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. And I suppose my question sort of follows on from Councillor Bosley's question about water storage and resilience. And Lawrence, you've just spoken that that the aquifer that those bores will be accessing will be the water storage facility. However, what happens when if there is a natural disaster or a power cut or something like that in Greytown, where the power does go out and therefore the pumps
on those bores are not able to operate. Has there been any thought about putting in perhaps a standby generator to power those pumps and ensure the Greytown water supply from those bores is still in operation?
Yeah, so the existing treatment plants have connection points for mobile generators, and I would expect this upgrade to include the same. Yep.
Thanks, Chair. Same sort of theory towards the storage, Adam. The problem I see with the park is that we can't put a storage tank in there unless there's some big underground thing put in the park sort of thing. If the option was to go up to the other end of Kurrawadi Street to the new land, you need non-contact time for your chlorine, which you can do in a leaching a large tank. Would that act as a storage tank as well? Is there an option where you can put a big tank there for storage and that acts as your leaching time as well for your chlorine? So you're killing two birds with one stone?
Just going to bring Lawrence back into that in terms of, is that something, would we go beyond, that Lawrence talked about for acting as the reservoir store? So potentially looking at putting an additional reservoir on site. I know that the chlorine contact tank was an option that we put in that could Street would provide a small level of storage, sure. But you would add additional cost in terms of.
But you would have that.
Such a reservoir on the site there.
You would then have the storage, because in the YT project, funny enough, we're all looking at the moment for the new thing. One of the key drivers for that states the ability to influence key strategic initiatives such as water resilience and storage. So if we go ahead without looking at the storage thing, we're not actually looking into the forethought of what we're trying to do to get everything.
So if I may, all options that are on the table would need some form of chlorine contact, be that either through the existing pipeline that runs between the treatment plant in the centre of Greytown or another small tank. A chlorine contact tank, though, is very small and does not significantly improve your resilience. So all options, I guess, would consider that and include that.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm sort of asking, Lawrence. If you made that tank to a large storage size, can you use that for non-contact time for your chlorine as well? So it's sort of doing two things at once, if you know what I mean. Is that possible?
It is possible, but effectively, if you're introducing a reservoir, you then need to pump out of that reservoir back into town. So you're not actually gaining any benefit over, dosing directly from the aquifer, if that makes sense, and pumping from the aquifer. You've still got that resilience issue with pumps.
Thank you. Any further questions for the team? Councillor Clemmer, sorry, had his hand up, and then Councillor Gray.
I just wanted to say, Lawrence, thank you for your answer to question 3 there. There's been a lot of talk, obviously, about the dumping of water, and I think you gave a very clear and uncontestable response to it. So thank you.
Councillor Gray.
Just wanted to ask a couple of technical questions, I guess. With the bore that you're proposing for the Soldiers Memorial Park, what's the lifespan on that bore, and what's its seismic resistance?
Do you know the lifespan on that bore, Lawrence?
Yeah, so the bore itself, the lifespan of it would depend on a number of different factors, including what's happening with the water and conditions underground. But typically we expect the bore itself to last up to 100 years, but the bore pump and the pipelines and things like that may need replacing at a more frequent basis. But again, that all depends on water conditions and a number of factors that we would just have to monitor over time. But For example, many of the bores in Lower Hutt have been in place since, you know, the 80s and 90s and still going fine. Yeah.
And seismic resistance was the second question, like, do they have like a seismic rating or?
So we would be considering, in terms of the pipelines and the connections to the bore, seismic resilience and ease of repair following a significant event. But the bores themselves tend to move along with the ground in a seismic event.
Councillor Macaulay.
Sorry, it's a non-technical question. Just on the responses on the funding, I was just interested, you said respondents outside of Greytown had evenly split view. And sorry, the numbers are probably there, but I just wondered, I couldn't find the numbers, but I mean, what were the percentage of respondents who were living outside Greytown? I just wondered if that was, I got the feeling they were mostly Greytown people who responded. So I wondered if that was actually meaningful. We go 41% mixed target.
So there was 10% of respondents were from Featherston, maybe 6% from Martinborough, and maybe 2 or 3% from outside of the district.
Yeah, just looking at this.
That'd be fair. So page 12.
Oh, okay.
Has a which ward do you live in, and it was answered by 99 of the respondents.
So about how many people would that be?
Well, 99 answered the question, and 10% were for outside.
Yeah, so it's not very.
So 17 people.
Yeah, so not
particularly.
Nine and nine were you split.
One of the things that we had discussed when we had in earlier conversations with this paper was that it seemed at the time reasonable that it would be a district-wide rate for the Soldiers Memorial option. It was sort of the outside of their more expensive options that may make more sense to be targeted if Greytown residents chose a more expensive option.
Oh, I remember that discussion. I was just interested in
Really seeing that.
how the update felt about it, because
Just to clarify, it was the respondents outside of Greytown had an evenly split view of district-wide versus targeted.
yeah.
So that's what I was referring to, that sort of mixed view.
Yes.
So, however, you know, obviously the respondents from Greytown wanted to see a district-wide one compared to 47% compared to 26.
Yeah.
There's a bit about what's in the response.
As always, yeah.
But overall, still, while it was mixed outside of it, still a small number.
Yeah.
And I think it was the verbatim comments that really helped sort of clarify that further.
Yeah.
And especially around things like, you know, should do they paid for this, we paid for this, it should be seen as being equitable.
Well, I think it comes down to that concept of we have to think obviously in this aspect from governance point of view too. Really.
Thank you, Councillor Plummer.
Yeah, can I just confirm that the actual site of the bore is not yet determined, so that's yet to, because there are a couple of community groups that are working through some potential options that may within the park area that might appease a lot of the naysayers to it from the RSA that was empty because of where it is in the site. So there's a little bit of flexibility about where this particular plant will go, isn't there? Within
That's right. We've done some initial work looking at where potentially we would put the new bore, obviously not within the pool. We've already had conversations with like the RSA council, Parks and Reserves team, but the actual final location hasn't yet been decided, and we will be coming back to council with that final location before work commences.
Wonderful, that's a good reassurance. Councillor Holmes.
Yeah, no, thanks again, Madam Chair. One of the things that's come out of the consultation document, and probably more so from those outside the Greytown ward, is the fact that Featherston is a good example where we don't have a secondary supply of water apart from Wahine and the Woodside treatment plant. So it has highlighted another issue. I guess in the future, it's probably not a conversation to be had on this day because we're deliberating about Greytown's resilience. But I think we should first almost consider what we can look at in the future for Featherston as well. So I just thought I'd raise that.
I'll just make one more comment about this process that we've followed.
Yes.
So this is the second time we've been down this place about approving or otherwise. And whilst some around the table might think, oh, we've wasted a lot of time. If you remember back to the first hearings, the community was overwhelmingly against Memorial Park for a whole lot of reasons. And I would just like to commend Stefan and your team in Wellington Water for going through this process and looking at a whole lot of other options and actually bringing it to the community and saying, this is one option, these are other options that you can consider. And it's really interesting that the feedback from the community has changed now, that options have been looked at. So to me, it's valuable time spent because we've now actually got a much more robust feedback from the community, I think, than what we had the first time, which was very much an emotional response from the community, and rightly so. So even though it's taken some time, thank you, Stefan, and to your team and Wellington Water.
Councillor Woodcock.
Thanks, Chair. So just a question, Adam, on the existing bore. If you look at the 100-year lifespan, it's got about 81 years to go. What's the options of just keeping that bore running and upgrading the pumping system, et cetera, for it? That it makes it resilient, so you have a spare pump there if something goes wrong, et cetera, and it can, a pump that can drop to the lower pressures, so we're not wasting water down the sewer ponds at night and that to relieve pressure, et cetera, to keep costs down without having to put another bore somewhere else in the park.
I guess there's a couple of things to that point, Woody. The first one is that the proposal is to continue to use that bore. The bore itself, the project would look to replace that existing pump with a submersible. Before we do that, we have to just check the condition of that bore, but for all intents and purposes, we are looking to continue to use that bore as part of the creating that water treatment plant as being resilient, given that, like Lawrence touched on, a duty and a standby. The second point I guess I'll raise to that is that we can't commission a new treatment plant at that site with just the existing bore at the moment, because we would have to turn that bore off for an extended period of time whilst we do the upgrade and the commissioning of that plant. So yes, we will be looking to continue to use that. We'll be able to sort of scale down exactly what you sort of see there, given that there's a lot of infrastructure there at the moment, and so a lot of that we'll be able to remove. There'll be some small pipe work obviously coming out of the ground there. But yeah, we can't just on its own. We still want to have a second bore and pump.
So would that one become the primary use one, or would the new one become the primary use one? Which one's going to be the backup and which one's going to be because the way I'm thinking is we've had complaints from again at the campground about the noise. So if we can keep that one, which is further away from the campground, as your primary, so it's the other one's only ever kicking out in if it's needed in urgency or for repairs or whatever, that's closer, maybe closer to the campground and noisier.
I think that's good feedback to take on board. I don't think at this stage it's been decided as to which will be the duty and standby, but that's great feedback to take on board in terms of the actual operation of those.
So the existing concrete tank structure and that above the board, that'll disappear, will it? Or is it containing going to be
existing sort of tally hut there?
Yep.
That won't be needed with the new setup going forward, because that will be housed within the new containerized treatment plant. There is some other bits and pieces. Obviously, the temporary containers will be removed as well.
But will there be a container as such or something over top of that bore?
There'll be something a lot smaller scale over top of the bore head pipe work and those sorts of things. But again, I think that came through in some of the feedback as well, was that we'll look to minimise any visual
impact.
That's sympathetic.
That's cool. No, thanks, Adam.
Through the space factor of community use.
Not any final questions for the team before we turn our attention to some of these recommendations? No? Right, there are a number of recommendations. The first couple are noting recommendations, so I'm going to take those together. So recommendation 2 notes that the majority of submitters to the consultation supported retaining the Greytown Water Supply Services in Soldiers Memorial Park, given the issues around affordability and project feasibility, but that they requested that the design of the infrastructure be in keeping with the park's cultural and natural heritage for quiet, reflective enjoyment. And 3 notes that the majority of submitters to the consultation support to fund the Greytown Water Supply Service through a district-wide rate. So at this point, we're just noting those. Do I have a mover, please? Councillor Plummer, and a seconder, Councillor Ealams. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, no. Those 2 motions are carried. Recommendation number 4 supports the following options: to installing a new bore in Soldiers Memorial Park, and B, fund the project through a district-wide targeted rate. Targeted rate meaning that only those connected to water would be charged. Moved by Councillor Gray, a seconder, Councillor Bosley. All those in favour of item number 4, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, no. Motion is carried. Item number 5 notes that in 2021, the council approved an easement under section 48 of the Reserves Act 1977 next to the pool in Soldiers Memorial Park to place the new water treatment plant. Have a mover, Councillor Plummer, Councillor Gray. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. All those against, no. Motion is carried. Number 6 has a number of points under it. Requests that the council officers, in collaboration with Wellington Water, report back to the strategy and working committee on the final design, which takes into consideration the following consultation feedback, and to fulfil sections 39, 40, 41, 42 and 43 of the Soldiers Memorial Park Management Plan, August 2007. They are A, to finalise the location of the bore and design that avoids the memorial park and is sympathetic to the natural cultural heritage of the park.
Could I just stop on that one? We've talked a lot about the fragility of the pool, and I just wonder whether we could put something in there and noting, because we're talking about avoiding the memorial parks and sympathetic, but we're not noting anything about the construction of a bore and the effect on a very fragile pool. So if we put something in there, just reminding people of that, because that's really quite critical.
To report back though to the strategy working meeting.
No, I realise that, but it's, but it says to finalise the location of the bore and design of more. I just would like something in there noting the fragility of the pool as well, so it becomes really front of mind to that.
It would be under E, but you could just list it as pools and buildings and pool.
That's somewhere in there. It needs to be in there.
I think it probably sits in the pool. Consider the needs for an updated assessment. So are you not comfortable that E covers it? Consider the need for an updated assessment on the impact of cultural heritage sites, trees and amenity values, historic values, buildings, turf and paving, and how these are to be.
I'd like the pool specifically mentioned. I agree with Alistair. Yeah. The pool really is a fragile piece of concrete.
Who's the mover?
Plummer, you have a second in?
No.
Yeah.
Who was the mover for, you had a mover for 6 yet? You've not
No,
got
I
that yet.
haven't got a
So if you were to add amenity values, including the pool, to E, would that sound?
Yeah, it's just important that it's noted, the pool itself. You happy with that, Woody?
Yeah, and one other thing as well.
Moving all of these as one.
We'll vote for all as one. Yeah. Sorry, did you say you had one more?
So it says in A to find officers in Wellington Water will come to us to finalise the location of the bore and design that avoids the memorial parks. Is that to finalise it, or is that to get an agreement from council that to approve? Do we get to vote to approve?
It will come back.
Yeah, so that.
So they can't just go and start something without us approving it first?
No. Yeah. So B, finalise the design of the water services infrastructure next to the pool that is in keeping with the natural cultural heritage of the park and surrounding buildings. C, confirm that the bore and water services infrastructure will have sufficient soundproofing for the quiet enjoyment for users of the park and the campground. D, receiving an updated timing and schedule of works. E, consider the need for an updated assessment of the impact on cultural heritage sites, trees, and amenity values, including the pool, historic values, buildings, turf, and paving, and how these are to be protected. And F, confirm the restoration of sites not used after the completion of work back to a park. A mover, please, Councillor Plummer, and a seconder, Councillor.
Yep.
All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, no. The motion is carried. I think we can take the final three together. 7, request the council officers report back to the Strategy and Working Committee to approve an easement under Section 48 of Reserves Act 1977 for Wellington Water to construct the bore. 8, notes that the consultation process fulfills the requirements of the Soldiers Memorial Park Management Plan, August 2007, in accordance with Section 41, that we must consider alternative sites. And 9, notes the following: the consultation process and in accordance with Section 24A of the Reserves Act 1977, that the council is not intending to change the purpose of Soldiers Memorial Park. Do you have a mover? Councillor Ealams, Councillor Plymouth second. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, no. Motions are carried. Well done, everyone. That brings us much closer to a resolution and solution to this ongoing issue. So thank you to yourselves for your involvement in the consultation process, and to all of the staff from our team in Wellington Water. Councillor Woodcock.
I just one comment, thanks Chair. Adam, Rob, Lawrence, thanks very much. Can I just give you a little bit of feedback we've sort of been talking about in the community is the containers and say a hut over the bore or whatever. There has been a thought about perhaps getting local artists or the college to paint murals to do with the RSA and the sports clubs there. Like if there's approval from the RSA and the sports clubs to do that, just the keeping the theme of things rather than just having a ugly old container sitting there sort of thing. That's just a bit of feedback.
And we've passed some feedback around to it.
Yep. No, cool.
Wonderful, thank you. It brings us to the end of our first meeting of the day. Please join me in the closing karakia. I'll just give you a moment to add your words.
One in, one in.
But we started. Brings our first meeting of the day to a close. Thank you, everybody.
What comes our next meeting?
12:30.
Unbelievable.
Hey.
Yeah, I'm coming.